You know this child. You may be raising one right now. They check on you when you seem upset. They smooth things over when the room gets tense. They notice everyone's mood before anyone has said a word, and they adjust themselves accordingly. They are the ones who never complain, never demands, never falls apart in front of you. And when you ask them how they are doing, they say fine. They are fine. They are always fine. But somewhere underneath that composure, something is happening that most parents never see. And the question this video is built around is not whether you have noticed this pattern in your child. The question is where it came from. Because this pattern did not start with your child. It did not even start with you. It is old. Older than any parenting book ever written. And the full weight of what it produces in a child's developing life has been documented clearly by historians, by developmental researchers, and by a piece of ancient wisdom that identified this dynamic thousands of years before psychology gave it a name. That is what we are investigating today. The ancient Roman household of the 3rd and 2nd centuries before the Common Era was one of the most thoroughly documented family systems in the ancient world. The physical structure of a Roman home, the atrium at its center, open to the sky, surrounded by the rooms where family life unfolded, was also a social structure. Everything in that household existed in relation to the paterfamilias, the male head of the family, whose legal authority over every person under his roof was absolute. Children in that system were not raised to have needs. They were raised to fulfill a function. What historians, including Suzanne Dixon, whose research on the Roman family is among the most detailed in modern scholarship, have documented, is that Roman children, particularly in elite households, were expected to read the emotional weather of the adults around them and respond to it appropriately. A child who brought their own emotional needs into a room where the paterfamilias was present was a child who had not yet learned the first lesson of Roman family life, that the room belongs to the most powerful person in it, and everyone else's job is to support that person's experience of it. Historians call this the management of emotional hierarchy. The child was not the center of the household. The child was a supporting figure in an adult drama. And the child's survival, social, emotional, and in some documented cases literal, depended on how well they read that drama and served their role within it. That pattern did not end with Rome. Move forward to the medieval European household of the 12th and 13th centuries, a world documented extensively by historian Barbara Tuchman, and by the household management texts of the period, and you find the same dynamic running in a different cultural costume. Children in those households were expected to be useful from the moment they were old enough to be useful. Emotional need was not a category the medieval household had time or language for. What a child felt was far less important than what a child did. And the child who figured out how to make the adults around them comfortable, who learned to suppress their own needs in service of the household, is emotional stability, was the pocketing child who survived and eventually thrived by the metrics of that world. What looked like a well-functioning child was actually a child who had learned something that developmental psychologists now call parentification, the documented process by which a child assumes emotional responsibility for the adults in their life, rather than receiving care appropriate to their developmental stage. This is where the research changed everything. Developmental psychologist Gregory Yurkovich spent years studying what he called destructive parentification, the specific dynamic in which a child takes on the role of emotional caretaker for a parent or for the family system as a whole. His research, documented in his foundational work on the subject, found that children who are parentified, who learn to monitor and manage the emotional states of their caregivers, develop in measurably specific ways. They become extraordinarily skilled at reading other people. They learn to suppress their own emotional responses because expressing a need creates instability in the system they have been managing. And they carry into adulthood a deep and usually unexamined belief that their needs are a burden, that asking for help is a form of failure, and that love is something you earn by making other people comfortable. That is not a personality trait. It is a learned survival strategy. And it was learned early, in response to a specific relational environment, long before the child had any language to describe what was happening. That pattern is still running in families today. It may be running in yours. Before we go any further, I want to pause and put something in your hands because what you just heard about parentification does not exist in isolation. The pattern your child is running right now belongs to a larger inherited pattern that came into your family before either of you arrived. And I built a free 5-question assessment specifically to help you identify it. It is called the Pattern Identifier. It takes about 2 minutes. And what it does is show you which of the 4 documented inherited parenting patterns is most active in your home right now, where it historically came from, what the research says it is producing in your child's development, and what the evidence across history, psychology, and ancient wisdom shows about what actually interrupts it. The pattern we have been investigating today, the child who carries everyone else and never asks for anything, is one piece of that larger picture. The quiz shows you the whole picture. And when you can see the whole picture, every episode on this channel becomes more specific to what is actually happening between you and your child. That specificity is what closes the gap. Not general information, personal clarity about your family's specific pattern. The link to take the quiz for free is in the description below. Take it now, then come back. The next layer of this investigation, and the one that I think will surprise you the most, is waiting right here. What ancient wisdom identified about this dynamic is not what most people expect to find. The book of Ezekiel, in a passage in chapter 18 that has been examined by biblical scholars across centuries, makes a statement that is precise in a way that feels almost modern. It draws a sharp distinction between the burdens of one generation and the responsibility of the next. It names the specific damage that happens when a child is made to carry what belongs to an adult. The Hebrew concept of mishpat, the right order of things, the proper distribution of responsibility according to role, holds that a child's role is to receive care, not to provide it. When that order is reversed, something in the child is required to grow before it is ready, and what grows prematurely does not grow correctly. Historians examining cultures where children were given appropriate developmental protection, where their emotional needs were treated as legitimate, where they were not required to manage the adults around them, have documented consistent outcomes that align precisely with what developmental science now measures. Children raised in those environments showed greater capacity for genuine relationships in adulthood, greater tolerance for their own emotional experience, and significantly greater ability to ask for help when help was needed. The specific thing you can observe in your own home this week is this. Watch what happens when you are visibly stressed. Not catastrophically stressed, just the ordinary stress of a hard day, a difficult conversation, a moment of frustration that shows on your face. Watch your child. Does your child move toward you to manage your mood? Do they become quieter, more accommodating, more careful? Do they suddenly become very helpful in a way that has nothing to do with what they want and everything to do with what you seem to need? That movement is not kindness. It is a survival response. And the child performing it is doing so because some part of their developing nervous system has learned that the emotional temperature of the adults around them is their responsibility to regulate. What history shows, what developmental research confirms, not perfectly, not without ever showing strain, but reliably enough that the child does not have to monitor and manage it for them. On a personal note, I grew up with 2 friends who fit this documentary to the letter. Even in middle school, they spoke about what they had to do when they got home, and nothing to do with playing or kid-like activities. In fact, Darian, a friend I knew, would always rush home to take care of the family just so he would have time to come to the playground and turn more into a kid. He got married early, got a real job early, and had kids early in life. It's almost as if he skipped some parts of growing up and simply was a grown-up most of his young life. The child you started this video thinking about, the one who is always fine, who never asks for anything, and lessons that were learned can be unlearned when a new and consistent experience begins to replace them. The documented path that history, developmental science, and biblical wisdom all point toward is not complicated. It is one thing, practiced in ordinary moments, more days than not. It is a parent who names their own emotional experience out loud, and then resolves it without requiring the child to participate in that resolution. A parent who makes visible to their child that adults have feelings, and adults also manage those feelings not by suppressing them, but by handling them. That demonstration, repeated across ordinary daily moments, sends a message to a child nervous system that cannot be communicated any other way. You do not have to take care of me. I can take care of myself. Your only job right now is to be a child. When a child receives that message consistently, researchers have documented what happens next. The child who never asked for anything begins to ask, slowly, carefully at first, testing whether the request will cost them something. And when it does not, when the ask is received with warmth and without burden, the child's nervous system begins to update the belief it has been carrying. Being loved does not require being needed. That is not a small shift. That is the beginning of a different life. If something in this video made you see your child or yourself a little differently, that feeling is worth following. Right now, I have a special free pillar video that really helps you bridge the gap between you and your child, simply by understanding how and why you both react the way you do, and how many of your choices are mentally embedded into your behavior, your very belief systems. If you don't watch any other video on this channel, I urge you to take the time to click the link below in the description if closing that gap with your child is important to you. The link is in the description. See you there.